Good afternoon and welcome. First item on the agenda is going to be the first draft of the binding arbitration ordinance. So, who wants to kick that off, Jen?
So this is pursuant to the charter amendment that passed in November. The charter amendment required the city to enact legislation to provide for the actual procedure for implementing binding arbitration. We've met multiple times over the last couple of months. Karen and Scott provided a lot of practical insight. We also ran this draft by Labor Council for the city. This is the first draft that we presented to you all. I don't know if you have any specific thoughts or questions. Practically what this does is if the city and either the police or fire unions reach an impasse during contract negotiations, this lays out a roadmap for the next steps, what happens next.
Okay. Time for questions.
Sure.
I've read this, and I've read it, and I've read it. I think it's a great, balanced, and fair document. But I'd like to have a specific answer to this question. The city in the past has had to engage in binding arbitration in terms of grievances in the past. We've always lost. Since I've been on council, we've lost every one of them, no matter how good a case we've been able to present. And in one instance, the arbitrator made an award to the person to the individual who brought the grievance that was twice as costly to the city, significantly twice as costly to the city as was even grieved about. The arbitrator just took it upon himself to double the award, and with that he surprised everybody. That was grievously unfair, if I may use that term, to the city. It's part of the reason why taxes may go up this year. And I would like to know if there's anything in this document that makes sure that that sort of inequity does not ever happen again.
Sure. What we have built in, just give me a moment here to, M5,
I'm sorry, what page?
I'm sorry, okay, so page 5.
5. Okay.
If you look at subsection 6, the way this has been crafted is so that the arbitrator can do one of three things, essentially. They could choose the city's proposal in its entirety. They could choose the union's proposal in its entirety, or they could craft a final award that is within the range of,
Okay.
let's just say salary, for example. The city proposes 1%, the union proposes 10%. The arbitrator would have to pick within that range.
Okay, but the arbitrator couldn't just
Can't just do
go
20%.
outside that range and be much more generous than
Or
was
0%.
anticipated.
Right, it would have to be between 1 and 10%.
Okay, thank you.
What about these couple of areas where we had comments?
So
where we
there
were-
are a couple of areas where we're looking for some input. I'm looking at the red line version. Page 4, M4.
They would have this version too, the one that has the comment.
Okay.
They should have it,
Yeah, okay. This one, I think, was a comment from Labor Council, and they've included the factor, comparison of assessed valuation of real estate property and tax rates of similar public employers in Maryland or other public employers in Washington County, Allegheny County, Franklin County, and Berkeley County. We use the different contiguous counties down below because they are similar socioeconomic. They're probably more similar to Washington County than all of the counties in Maryland in total. But we were looking for some input there. Whether you wanted to include a comparison of these figures across Maryland or using the contiguous counties. I would recommend, I think, keeping it consistent and using Allegheny, Franklin, and Berkeley counties. But I'm open to.
I mean, you're recommending the state, just as it is there.
I would recommend that we use the latter segment.
Oh, after the or.
Instead of
After the
just
or.
Maryland, yes.
Mhm.
That appears someplace else in the
Yes, that's
document.
down at the bottom of the fifth page. It's
Yeah.
also used.
So that kind of makes sense.
Mhm. Are there any other comments on that section?
Would we be okay with changing that language there then?
I'm okay with that. Yeah, it seems like Dom said makes the most sense.
And then on the next page, there's the last two sections up at the top. Again, we can do,
What page is that, Jen? I'm sorry.
that's page 5. We're sort of choosing between the last two.
Oh, yes, okay.
If we choose the last one, I think it is, it's complete. If we choose those items determined by the blank to be mandatory topics for bargaining, we'd have to set some sort of parameters there. Karen, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. I mean, I think because we're not really constrained by state law, I think it makes more sense to use the second sentence.
I agree with that. I thought that removing 7 completely and just add that
And
as the last
7, 8,
factor,
and-
yep.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yep.
And then finally, number 6 there, we can set a number of days. I think realistically, we can't, we don't really have any enforceable authority to tell the arbitration panel when they need to get us an award by. So we can set a number, but we can't really enforce that.
So we could say it within 30 days and just hope for the,
Right,
Okay.
hope for the best, right. And the plan is to have something for adoption by July 1.
Correct. The plan would have been to follow up the executive sessions with work session in June, with a reading, an introduction in June, and a approval at the end of June with an effective date, July. But if you want to consider this, this is our open work session. We can make these few changes, and then introduce the ordinance at the May regular meeting, and have the approval at the June regular meeting, and then still the effective date in July, which makes good sense.
Yep. Good with that?
If that's okay with everyone?
Will there still be an opportunity for discussion at that point? The only reason I ask is I don't know if Chris has anything to add or not, obviously it's on him for not being here at the moment, but.
Well, of course, if there's a motion and
Yeah,
there's a motion and a second, there'll be
Right.
Yeah, it'll be,
room for discussion, yes.
Plus the preliminary.
And,
agenda
Pardon me?
Preliminary agenda review is next week
Oh,
as
yes,
well, so
yeah.
that's-
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I'd just like to compliment council on doing a good job of crafting this. This is not something easy to do, and it's very important.
I commend staff as well. Scott and Karen did a lot of research, and we did again run it past Labor Council too, so that's a good product.
Congrats to all. This was a lot of hard work, I know.
Thank you.
So have the unions had a chance to take a look at it yet, or no?
No.
Or that now it'll be open them to see?
Yeah, no, they have not previously, no. Is it? Okay.
all right, we're gonna skip past the proclamation at this point and wait for the individuals to come to show up.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jen.
Shall we jump into budget review, Michelle? Let's do that.
Is there anything we should wait till Kristen is here?
Well, maybe he should have been here at 3 o'clock. I haven't heard from him.
Good evening. Good evening, Michelle.
So I'm back once more,
Welcome.
and last Tuesday, we reviewed some potential budget adjustments specifically for fiscal year 18 in the general fund. And we had a document, we went through each item list by list, and I think the goal identified at the end of the meeting last week was to find a way to go from a 5.5 cents proposed tax rate increase to a 2.8 cents, and the 2.8 cent represents our constant yield rate. After the discussion, I think there were things that were on the list that was decided that some did not like. And so my task, and Valerie's task this last week, was to go back and find a way to make the numbers balance with removing the $672,000 in revenue. So I prepared a spreadsheet, and I think, actually, even before we look at some of these items, as Valerie and I went back and looked at everything within the budget, it was extremely difficult to identify even another $75,000 different than what we had done previously as a group with the rest of the department managers. This time, I kind of took their vote away from them, and we made some executive decisions on where, again, one-time cuts that could be done in fiscal year 18. And so the schedule that I put back in the packets this evening includes, on the far right-hand side, it's just a listing of everything that we looked at previously. And then on the left-hand side, it says to be reviewed on 5/9, which is this evening, is just, I think, at least where I heard, the things that we needed to leave in. So everything would have stayed the same until we got down on the back of the sheet or either on page 2. once we passed the miscellaneous department operational reductions, the remaining items were areas that, like I said, we stretched to find a way to balance, to get us back to a balanced budget for proposed fiscal year 18. And so we can walk through those items one by one, if it's still the goal, or we can look at the items that are left there and make sure that we still have a consensus that what I thought I heard was really the direction that I received.
Yeah, Michelle and I went down both of our notes, but we can certainly do that if the body wishes, or we can talk about the changes at the bottom of page 2.
I just want to say this, and I appreciate what everybody's trying to do here, and I will do everything I can to get this budget passed. So I can assure you, if there are 3 other votes to pass it, there'll be 4 votes to pass it. If there's 2 votes, there'll probably be 3, but I don't know. But, you know, we're striving to do something with smoke and mirrors. And if everybody wants to do the smoke and mirrors game, I'm up for it, but I think the citizens have to know that that's what we're doing. And what I'm talking about clearly is this $200,000 revenue source. Now, we're telling people we're not going to raise taxes to generate this $200,000 because we're going to do a stormwater management fee instead. Now, I don't know about everybody else at this table, but I associate stormwater management, I associate fees with being used for something. So unless you're gonna tell me there's this $200,000 expense in this budget for stormwater management, then what we're saying is we're gonna charge you a fee for stormwater management, it's gonna go right in the general fund, and we're not gonna spend it for stormwater management. But we're gonna call it a stormwater management fee, and guess what? We didn't raise your taxes, we kept them right at constant yield. And if that's what everyone wants to do, that's fine. But I don't think our citizens are quite that slow on the shtick to figure out that what we just did is what politicians are accused of every day, of just speaking out of both sides of their mouths. And that's what we're doing. We're imposing a fee, but it's not this next year going to be associated with the use that it's supposedly for.
How do you figure it's not gonna be used for what it's supposedly for, since
Is there a stormwater?
since it will replace,
I'm sorry.
since it will replace costs associated with public works, such as storm drains and things like that?
So my answer would be to that, Mr. Mayor, if you can show me that we have $200,000 in expenses in this budget for stormwater management, then I would totally agree with you. We need to get this money for it. But if you're telling me maybe there's $50,000 in this budget for that kind of stuff, and we're charging our citizens an annualization of $400,000, that's my problem. Now, again, if we have $200,000 worth of stuff in this budget already that we're expending for stormwater management that these fees would go towards, yeah. But I'm not inclined to believe we have anywhere near that in this budget that's related. If I'm wrong, somebody please tell me.
We do have many costs associated with items that can be considered stormwater management, including even street sweepers. I can't necessarily tell you right this moment
Okay,
that
but
it
you
adds
think
up to
you
200
can-
or over or slightly under.
Okay, but
but-
you don't think it's a great gap?
And I believe
think
that
it-
it's fair because it encompasses everyone as opposed to those individuals. who
Mayor, I
just
don't
pay
disagree,
taxes.
I don't disagree with
All
that.
right.
But I think you
And-
understand what I'm saying, that's all.
And we tried to take a step back and look at things that would be eligible that we're currently doing, and then also recognize that the majority of what, when we impose the fee and what would be eligible is, you know, a whole other component, all the things that we're not currently doing that we would need to do on top of.
Right.
So we looked at, there's probably some seasonal and part-timers that are, you know, here 10 months out of the year in public works. We have $10,000 in storm drain repairs within the budget. And then Jim Bender and Rodney Tissue spend a good deal of time working on stormwater management type of projects currently. And so we felt between the staff and the cost, one of the things that we know we need to purchase in our fiscal year 18 budget is a street sweeper, which we were going to bond finance. And I think though the $200,000, it will come down to how quickly we can move forward and get to a certain point that we are committing to the stormwater management fee and can set aside those costs into a separate fund. If we go the whole year and we're not there, then I don't think that we can simply move fees out into another fund. We're gonna have to reabsorb them in the general fund.
Right.
Hi, Kristen.
So are we good with leaving that in this proposal or not?
So, at some point, is somebody going to come in front of us and say, we're going to have to ask you to start a new section of the budget called stormwater management, and that the fee is going to be such and such, and we're going to have to approve that fee?
Yes, and actually, I think we talked briefly last week, even before that point. So if this is approved at the end of May, in June, staff is going to be sitting here and we're going to say, before we can move forward and do anything additional, stormwater management fee, we have to do a rate study.
Right.
We will need permission to do an RFP to find somebody to do that rate study. And we internally, staff-wise, are going to have to identify funds in which we can pay that third-party person to do the rate study fee. Then the results will be brought back. The people in charge of the rate study will, I'm sure, do a presentation, and there will be much further conversations on the setting of the fee, what's involved, who it applies to.
What's an RFP go for in that type of scenario? Any ballpark? I mean, we talking $5,000 or $10,000? Are we talking a couple $100,000?
I don't.
I think it will likely be more than 10, but I don't,
Right.
Yeah.
I would hope not 100,000, but
But
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
wondering if it's gonna be counterproductive to the whole.
Well, you would
thing to
have to
begin
have,
with.
you would
You
have to have.
a rate
No,
study.
I understand that, but if you're,
Expense-wise, if we're looking
Right.
to reduce expense for 18 and then we come back and have to add expense back.
Right.
I said last week, I still think it's premature for this budget, but that was just my feeling, so.
I think that you're kidding yourself if you think it's gonna be that low. I mean, I think the rate study will probably come in somewhere between 50 and 70,000. And I think that the first iteration of that will show some figure closer to $1 million in annual costs, both operational and capital calculation. I think you're gonna find that fee, will come in 6 or 7 different sort of levels of structure. When you spread that across, 20,000 properties, in the city, you're gonna come up with, somewhere between, $10 and $100 a year, per property, for that figure. I mean, I guess that's sort of what I envision occurring just from that analysis. And you can do it next year, the year after, but this is coming. And you're either going to wait for the process like Indian Head and Hampstead and some others, and have the state, use you as the guinea pig for fines because you're not doing enough, or you're going to be proactive like Frederick City and adopt an appropriate structure and start to address these things in a more aggressive, prioritized manner. And those are your two choices.
Yeah, and I get that, I guess, I don't know, maybe what I'm still not seeing is how do we get a $200,000 savings before we go through all that? Do you know what I mean?
I just don't envision it taking more than a budget cycle to do. And, you know, unlike your property or business personal property or utility tax, those taxes have an assessment process as part of this specific budgetary deliberation. Whereas your fee, you know, it has a process where you can institute it at any time during that 12-month cycle. So I guess I don't envision, you know, it following that, you know, or the same specific time frame.
Michelle,
Yes.
one of the questions that needs to be answered, in my view on this, is it if the federal government is going to actually require this be done. Now, I know that Kristen thinks it's going to happen, and he sees evidence as he looks around the state for the fact that it's going to happen. But if something should change and we implement this, there are going to be a lot of dissatisfied people out there. I do think, in fact, I'm pretty sure I know, that if we don't implement this and the federal government has essentially ordered it to be done, and if we start getting fines imposed by the federal government, then the citizens are going to be unhappy too, and so is the mayor and city council going to be unhappy. So is there, before the rate study done, is there any way that we can check to see if we can get some additional information about whether or not this is going to be, is this going to come at us with a gun in our head, essentially?
And I don't
Councilman,
think anybody can answer that question.
Right, it would really be more the state requirement from the permit that we're going to be getting soon, probably at the end of the summer. And that requirement that will come from MDE and the state will be what outlines that. And I don't see at this time that even if there's some changes in the federal regulations, whether or not that will change at the state level and what they're requiring us to do.
So we're gonna get the permit, like you said, this one regardless, that'll stipulate.
Oh, it's coming.
Right.
Absolutely.
But what we don't know, I think, and Don was a very good point of what that timeline is and what timeline the community has to adhere to that. Do you have any insight on that? I mean, do you know?
Well, I mean, we had a presentation from Aero Consulting at our last council meeting in Myersville, and, you know, and they've done a number of MS4 analysis for jurisdictions, and they've had significant communication with the state at this point. You know, and whether it be through that discussion or through MML discussions with other member municipalities, you know, and I said this the last time, the time for political policy deliberations has passed. Yeah. You know, this has went through legal proceedings, you know, and as Gary Rohr used to say, you know, 30 years ago, you'd go down to the state and you'd have 30 developers and one environmentalist in the room, and you go down now and you've got 30 environmentalists and one developer in the room, and that's just the reality of how that has changed. And so, you know, these environmental entities have pressed this legally for the better part of the last 10 years, have won these proceedings up through the federal levels, and the feds have come down at this point and said, look, there is no additional room for policy recourse. This is going to be the law. We're going to apply this law to the state process, and that's going to be applied to the local jurisdictions. And so, you know, as much as even the federal administrations may want to toy to some degree with that prerogative, the legal proceedings have spoken. You know, that time for political debate, I think, in my opinion, passed
No, I'm not debating
when
whether
the
we
courts
adhere to
make
it
a
or not, because I
decision.
don't think, obviously, like you said, we have a choice. I guess my question remains, I think what Don was alluding to is, do we have to do this now, or is it gonna come out and be like, you have 5 years to implement this? or
I think
2
it'd be
years, or
great
1
to
year?
hear from the jurisdictions,
Right.
or get some feedback from the jurisdictions that have already been issued directives associated with these permits and fines associated with these permits, because you're either going to look like you're doing something, or you're going to look like you're doing nothing. And, you got dozens of jurisdictions to sort of apply this process to. And, the further along in the game, so to speak, that you are, when your turn comes up for this to be applied to, the better off you're going to be, in terms of that enforcement action and that fine associated process. And the reality is, at the end of the day, I know you say, if things change and folks are upset, here's the reality. This funding is going to be there so they're either gonna be upset that you're doing it via your taxing purposes, or they're going to be upset that you're doing it this way. I'm simply trying to identify a process by which I think there's a greater degree of fairness applied, because it's applying to all properties, as they impact this specific item, because just like any other water and sewer or trash customer, it's going to be treated like that type of utility. And so the sooner we start looking at it that way and applying a cost associated with it that way, the more equal we can spread that cost among a much greater number of properties.
And I think when we sit here and we say, this is the proposal and this is a serious consideration, and we want to keep that in with our proposed 18 budget adjustments, we're saying as a group that our commitment is, whether the order is 5 years or 10 years down the road, we're looking to do it sooner than later, because we have to find a way to offset where our assessed value and our our total tax revenue is falling short.
Mr. Mayor, could I recommend that we sort of stay these proceedings, since we have all these guests that are scheduled?
I was
for-
actually good
I'm
as
fine with
about
that.
before Michelle started her last statement. So. Okay,
See you in a bit.
all right, we'll come back to you, Michelle. All right, we're gonna move on to, I have a proclamation for Washington County Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month. And can I get Carol Laurie and Jim Kirchhoff et al. Up front?
All I gotta do is take pictures with Jim. That was their pregnancy across the board.
It's okay, Mayor, we'll get some of the other members of the coalition for the, oh, there we go, okay, he was using Latin on me. All right, here we go. Just want to thank everybody for having the proclamation. One of the things Greater Hagerstown tries to do at times is we'll delve into some of those conversations that aren't always the easy conversations to take as a community, and teen pregnancy prevention is one of those challenges that our community faces. About 15 years ago, we started a coalition. Our organization helped put it together. Carol Laurie, I don't know if some of these others were there from the beginning, but Carol's one of the early ones here. We went through several different changes, of course, over those some years when we hit the budget challenges. I know the funding for Teens Have Choices, which is what it evolved into, it kind of pulled that away. We had about a year off, and Carol came back to me and said, can we try to facilitate this again? It's still an issue for our community and something that we wanted to do for Greater Hagerstown Committee. I'm going to let Carol, I'm going to pass the mic over to Carol here and just say a couple words about the issue.
Yes, just very briefly, we still are the 4th highest teen birth rate in the state of Maryland, and that may, although that has improved dramatically when it comes down to the actual number of youth, and we still have an issue in our community that needs to be addressed, which is why we need the coalition, so that people are aware of the consequences when a child has a baby. Leads to poverty and many other, lack of education and many other issues for our community to then address further on down the road. So we have worked very hard as a community to bring our rates down. We have increased services available for teens and for parents so that there are medical resources available as well as information for youth to make healthy choices. So we hope that you will, when issues come before you that are the consequence of teen pregnancies, that you will give a thumbs up and participate in solutions.
Okay, and as Jim pointed out, some issues are hard to talk about, and there are hard facts involved. As I read the proclamation to myself earlier, I was like, wow, this is saddening, actually, is what it is. So, anyway, this is a proclamation for Washington County Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month, May of 2017. Whereas while Washington County's teen birth rate has declined over the past 20 years, in 2015, Washington County still had the fourth highest teen birth rate in Maryland, with 110 births to teens aged 19 and younger. Whereas teen pregnancy may be caused by and contribute to a host of social and economic issues, including lower educational level attainment, higher unemployment rates, poverty, health issues, overall child well-being, and other risky behavior. And whereas nearly all teen pregnancies are unplanned, and teens say they did not want to get pregnant or cause a pregnancy. And whereas 44% of reported chlamydia infections in Washington County were in teens 19 and under, and 78% of those cases were teens living in the 21740 and 21742 zip codes. And whereas taxpayers spend approximately $25,000 in additional costs to support a child of a teen parent through increased public assistance payments, lost tax revenue, and increased expenditures for public health care, foster care, and criminal justice services. And whereas the Washington County Teen Pregnancy Prevention Coalition members are working to ensure that educational programs, services, and other community resources are available to our youth so they can make informed and healthy decisions. Now therefore, I, Robert E. Brucci II, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, Maryland, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 as Washington County Teen Pregnancy Prevention Month in Hagerstown, Maryland, and encourage all citizens to raise awareness of the consequences of teen pregnancies on children, families, and communities.
Thank you. If we could, I just want to pass around and let everybody introduce themselves. There's been multiple groups that have been on this coalition. One who wasn't able to be here today was Eric Michaels from the Washington County School System. A couple of projects that this group worked on together, and it was all through volunteer efforts, was trying to get an updated website, which is on the school system's website now. So there's a lot of resources there for kids and families to go to. We also have a health and wellness event going on at the Valley Mall on June 23rd and 24th that parents and children can attend and get some information. But if we'll just quickly go around and some of just who you are and where you're from.
I'm Rod McCray. I work at the Washington County Health Department.
Major Warren from the Community Free Clinic.
Lara Shepard from First Christian Church. I direct Created to Be Me Camp.
I'm Carol Grove from Meritus Medical Center.
I'm Kim Dudley from the Family Center.
I'm Jennifer Kuhn from Meritus Medical Center.
I'm Cindy Powell with the Washington County Free Library Teen Services.
Kathleen O'Connell, Washington County Library.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much in what you do and trying to spread education and awareness. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Hagerstown Neighborhood Development Partnership, Inc., 2006 and 2016. Morgan Plummer is the director.
How you doing? Doing well. Jennifer?
Hi there. Thank you for having us today. We just wanted to come in and give an overview of what the Hagerstown Home Store has been doing and just some updates on who we're serving. Will the presentation be up, or do you have the PowerPoint? Okay. Looking at... Thank you very much. Okay, I just wanted to provide an update on staff as we've recently had some changes. So again, I myself am Morgan Plummer. We have Brenda Gordon as our senior housing counselor, and then we've recently hired Becky Miles as our part-time housing counselor as well. Since 2006, just a couple updates, we have had the ability, with the assistance of the City of Hagerstown, to finance 71 subordinate mortgages through the CPIP program. So we've been able to put 71 first-time home buyers in homes through that program. We've also counseled 14,429 clients with homebuyer education, landlord and tenant rights, fair housing counseling, and foreclosure issues. We've also facilitated 1,421 home purchases by offering the first-time homebuyer workshop. Through programs such as the Barbara Ingram School and the Baltimore Street Library Parking, we've generated $13,399,000 in development capital for the city. We've also increased funding from corporate foundations, the state and city grants totaling $1,329,491. We've also maintained high standards with corporate governance and with clean audits through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. For the housing counseling, through our foreclosure counseling, home ownership counseling, loan modifications, landlord and tenant rights, all of our educational services, we have served, again, 14,429 clients since 2006. The down payment and closing cost assistance, which is provided through the City of Hagerstown. Since 2008, we've been provided funds in the amount of $248,500, which again has put 71 families into first-time homes. For the Baltimore Street project, which is now the library parking, that was a development capital of $1.7 million. Housing counseling, for the homebuyer workshop, we've had those who have purchased, or those have gone through our program, our workshops, 1,211 of those clients have purchased homes. And we've also conducted 256 workshops. The Barbara Ingram School was a development capital of $10,289,000. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program was a development capital of $1.4 million. This was a strategy for foreclosure issues within the city and county, as well as funds for the transit center and housing acquisition and counseling. Through our financial partnerships, we've raised $1,326,491. And with our real estate market data research, that's our market analysis and studies with the vacant upper lot floors evacuation, the AIA Lee and Sycamore Street study, and the Washington County Hospital reuse study. Through our partnerships and support with the city, we've been able to make a huge impact with who we're serving and how we're helping, and we just wanted to show our appreciation.
It's hard to believe it's been 10 years that the Hagerstown Neighborhood Development Partnership's been in existence, and it continued the process of what was previously a standalone home store operation. And to give you some idea of our current budget now, it is almost $200,000, and this is without any major development project in the plan right now. The city's providing, I would say, something in the neighborhood of, in restricted funds, about $21,000, and then housing counseling, operation funds of about $28,000, or about, well, let's say almost $50,000, or about a quarter of the overall budget. But that is leveraging private bank investments from their foundations, from mortgage counseling services, federal money, some county money, and other funds that are basically making up the other 3/4 of the HNDP and home store budget. So it's interesting, the 10 years ago, the HNDP was formed to be a 501c3 private nonprofit development, community development corporation. And the impact of some of the projects, certainly we were impacted by the housing bust and the real estate market challenges of 2008. But to see something like Barbara Ingram come together, HNDP and its nonprofit status facilitated an $800,000 Maryland Historic Tax Credit grant towards the renovation of that project that significantly reduced the public investment in that school. And actually, HNDP was the owner of record with Bank of America being the creditor, which lent the money, but the property technically was owned by us until the school board paid the loan, the lease off, and then with its transfer and the payoff of the lender, the school board or the county now owns the property. The other property on East Baltimore Street ended up being converted, as we know, into the needed space for parking for the new library expansion. And so we're pleased that we've been able to be a part of those. And I guess really in today's challenging housing environment in the city, we stand ready to work with the city and the mayor and council and staff in facilitating other projects. We don't have a lot of capital by ourselves. Our fund balance is probably just a couple $100,000 of working capital, but we can be a resource, a conduit, and can bring other partners to the table. So as you all work through your strategic plans on downtown revitalization, perhaps increasing home ownership and other projects, we'd love to be a more active partner with you.
Any questions or comments?
And you've done this through the decade with completely clean audits.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
We have both the HUD audits, and then we also have our own financial audits. And of course, as a 501c3, our 990s are out there, and they're available for public inspection, and certainly out there on the web and the Ethernet and GuideStar and other plations.
So you've got audits upon audits upon audits, right? So it is pretty impressive.
And we're very pleased, to have Morgan with us as our, well, Morgan, you've been with us as executive director how long now? I lose track of time.
Started in October.
Last October, so, we're very fortunate. We have a capable staff and Morgan, and then some of our other folks that have been with us for a number of years in the housing counseling areas, particularly in the home store operation. That's been very successful. And several members of our board are involved with the real estate community or the mortgage banking industry, that sort of thing. So it's a nice collaborative partnership, and we're very happy to now have Emily working with us as the city liaison from the mayor and council on our board, and look forward to continuing the collaborative partnership for the future. So keep us in mind as you think about your goals for housing and community redevelopment, and we would love to be a partner with you in that.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle? Okay, so I think we're probably okay with the $200,000 being
Wait a minute, I
left.
want to ask just one question.
Sure, go ahead.
When this fee is applied, I assume, and I think this is probably correct, but I want to hear your answer. that the fee is going to be able to be applied over every customer that the city of Hagerstown has as far as water goes.
It's based on impervious surface.
Okay, I understand how it's based, but,
So customers,
so only the
nonprofits.
only the people within the corporate limits of the city are going to have to pay this? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
So it's not
That's all
going
the
to
further we
apply
can
to
assess.
any place else where we sell water, only within the corporate limits?
correct.
Correct.
Unless the
assume-
county also implements
The
one.
rate study itself will give us the ideas about how we want to calculate. Is it going to be based on impervious surface? Some examples on how we will want to do that and what that rate should be.
I'm sorry. When you said impervious surface, does that mean, like back to would there be some people that would not be subject to that
No,
particular fee?
No, everybody's gonna be
everyone should be subject to
Your
it.
sidewalk is an impervious
Impervious
surface.
surface.
Or your roof, or
Right.
a
Or your
parking lot,
garage,
right.
or-
And you're not just, you're going to manage and maintain and rehabilitate yours. In other words, whatever the city owns, once this all shakes out, will be what the city manages and improves and maintains like it's used to. But what will also occur is that you will have to, at minimum, have an awareness of county and state and private storm drain systems within your jurisdiction, and also have the response capability to think of yourself as almost like a monitoring entity of those other entities that own them. So, you know, if there's a state storm drain system that's within your local boundary, within your municipal boundary, you're not going to have to address it, but you are going to have to be aware of it and almost be a responder if there is a deficiency in it to report it to the appropriate process.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
So in looking at the list at the top, we have about $422,000 adjustments in revenue to reduce, and again, that's to reduce what was in the fiscal year 18 proposed budget. And then we start the expenditure side. I think last week we heard not so much, nobody was interested in looking at small amounts from all the individual events that we had identified previously, but instead to do a $10,000 reduction overall. Leaving $100,000, an additional $100,000 that the general fund needs to produce in the way of vacancy savings. We were okay with the $44,000 reduction from the general fund for retiree amounts to the health insurance fund. And then there were several CIPs that staff had originally proposed prior to the May 2nd meeting, but only 4 of those projects were leaving as potential adjustments at this point. And those are $5,000 reduction to what's in the book for the ice rink, deferring the traffic calming project, which is $20,000, deferring a portion of the paving project for the HPD, which is $30,000, and reducing the downtown beautification project by $10,000.
Okay, before you turn the page, I'd like to go back to the health insurance fund.
Okay.
I heard lots, as I went door to door in the last election, about insurance from city employees. And I just want to make sure that this reduction is not going to have a commensurate reduction in health insurance for city employees or retirement, or retirees, is that right?
No, this is
So-
not changing the plan, no.
Okay, so there is no financial pain for the people, for those people by this reduction.
That is correct. And actually, any change that is made in the health insurance plans for active and also retiree has to be voted on. 3 out of the 5 employee groups that are represented on the healthcare committee, and then In addition to that, several of the union contracts also contain specific language regarding health insurance and health insurance coverage. So we cannot just do that by simply saying, take $44,000 here, Michelle, go change the plan. It doesn't work that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question as well. For the defer signal timing optimization and defer PW signal controller upgrades project, staff was okay with deferring that, so why are we not? Because that's $40,000.
That was,
speaking to
yeah, that
you
was
guys.
discussed last week.
I think that was my notes,
Yeah.
my understanding from last week.
No, it was.
Okay.
I'm
I
just
just wanna make sure.
curious if there was a reason why we don't want to defer that.
What's his name?
The 20,000 for deferring signal timing optimization, 20,000 for deferring signal controller upgrades?
Yeah, that's the very thing that we talked about last time, and we decided we weren't going to defer. And that's, is Rodney around?
Because I reached out to Rodney, and he said he was okay with deferring the two. I mean, I'm sure he would prefer not to, but.
Yeah, all of the items were initially vetted by the department heads that, when we originally offered them.
For the optimization,
Yeah,
it's,
And the
it's just
controller
that,
upgrade.
I mean, the signals are functioning now. It's just trying to get traffic flow to be as optimal as possible.
And where are we talking about?
It was on Northern Avenue.
Northern Avenue, Oak Hill,
Oak Hill.
and
Yeah,
Hamilton.
those three.
We've had complaints for years about that.
Well, I mean, traffic changes over time.
Right.
So every 5 years or so, we look at a corridor like that and we try to retime the signals. So this is just the money that we use to do the computer model.
I can
So
tell
if we
you,
don't do it this year, we're gonna do it next year, and we're gonna.
I can tell you that
okay.
I traveled that length of a roadway from the terrace to Legisburg Pike on Northern Avenue with those three signals 32 times a week. I've never had a problem with,
You're on Northern.
yeah.
You go across Northern at all, or Oak Hill?
Oh, yeah, I come across to Oak Hill. I mean, you sit there, the light eventually changes, and you go across, and, you know, I mean, fortunately for me, I've traveled that enough to know that I would rather not come down Oak Hill, because that's the longest light.
Right.
Hamilton is shorter than Oak Hill. If I've gotta come that way, I take Hamilton, I don't take Oak Hill. You know, but like I said, I travel it. And probably 32 is probably a low number for how many times I travel that road a week.
Are both projects tied to that specific location, or
Yes.
just 433?
Signal controller upgrades. Rodney, I'm sorry.
So 640 and
Northern Avenue and
433,
Oak Hill.
right? That's the two we're talking about.
Yeah.
433 is the one that specifically mentions that area.
I think that's,
But 640,
Mentions Northern Avenue.
okay.
For fiscal year 18.
433 is specifically that intersection of Northern and Oak Hill,
Yeah.
where the equipment that's there, the computer basically that runs the intersection would be upgraded.
But not changing the timing of lights or anything else.
No,
Yeah,
it's just replacing obsolete equipment.
Sure.
I think is what that's for.
But if it's not done this year, it's gonna have to be done next year or
Right.
soon.
I mean, of the two, I think replacing that equipment's more important than the timing.
433 is more important
Not
than 640.
necessarily. What it is replacing, a lot of our signal lights work on a loop system. It's a wire that's in the asphalt, creates a magnetic loop. Car pulls on it, it breaks the magnetic field, tells the signal to change. This 433, this $20,000, is basically to take that equipment out and use a camera system called Autoscope. And the cameras recognize the traffic and recognize the vehicles in that way. It helps us in some regards, especially when we're doing paving, so that you don't have to replace the loops in the asphalt, that sort of thing. We only have probably half a dozen intersections around the city that use Autoscope. Most of them are the traffic loop. The signal works fine, we can still make it work fine. This is just a manner of moving on to newer technology and improving our.
when are you planning on paving Oak Hill at Northern Avenue? My guess is not anytime in the very near future, because it was done not too long ago.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I offered it up. I mean, we have a number of intersections, we like the Autoscope system. You can do other things with it, than with the traffic loop, but the system's working fine. there was a way to just upgrade the system and bring it into a more of a modern system. If we don't do it, it's not the end of the world by any means,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you, Eric.
I don't care if you leave it in or take it out, if you want to know the truth of me. I'm just stating fact, that's all.
Yeah, these, they're not super critical.
So you said you were having a tough time coming up with other cuts. I'm just saying, if they're saying there's $40,000 that's not super critical, then we should add that back in.
Well, I mean, but to understand, what we did give you is balanced. I mean, so we're not,
Sure.
yeah,
And
okay.
and we did, and not saying that we may
And
or
the
may
only
not
reason
like
that you
those,
took
but-
$10,000 out of the fairgrounds fireworks is because we're not having the all-day
All the
type
additional
event
events.
that
Correct.
we usually have. It's just the
Correct.
fireworks now.
Correct.
But you'll still have vendors and.
Wait, I thought you said it was 10,000.
We're reducing it,
10,000
yeah, to-
reduction
so
for
whatever,
all those events.
Well, I think last week what I heard was,
Fine 10,000.
Yeah.
That's
don't
what you-
necessarily nickel and dime and show me 2,000 from every one of these events. Find a way to do 10,000 in total across all the events, so in whatever manner the staff could identify to easily do that.
that made the most sense with that
I
event.
would just say Country Fest is 6,500 of it right there.
And we're not having a country
It's
fest.
not happening.
Correct. Thank you, Rodney.
You're just putting that number in there somewhere in the line.
Correct.
Correct.
It just happens to be that particular line.
Okay, can we return the page now?
Okay, turn in the page. Second page. So all the miscellaneous department operational reductions were fine. And so at the bottom of the page is the areas in which we needed to identify new savings. When I left the table last time, we said, find a way to make legal fees be flat with the fiscal year 17 budget. So when I went back and looked at what was in fiscal year 18 proposed budget, that was actually $20,000. I would just caution us in that in the current year, in fiscal year 16, in total for that area and department, we spent a little over $320,000. That amount was less in our fiscal year 17 budget. And in where we're currently trending, we are going to be over budget in that area in fiscal year 17. So just keeping that in mind, we'll have to find a different way to do things for fiscal year 18. But I put the $20,000 reduction because that's what I heard. I think we had at least 3 nods for that, correct?
Yep.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
Lou's not.
Okay. The rest are the areas that we came back to find the additional money to balance the budget at the very bottom. So if we decide to put the $40,000 back in these CIPs on the front, we can do that. Just means we can not, some of these other items we're recommending can now be removed from consideration. One of the things looking at doing is on our fire training center project, reducing what we would put in from transfers from general fund by $8,000 and hoping that we can either find alternate funding sources, either through some partnership or some donation.
I've asked a partner already, so they're working on that.
And that's not taking it to zero, that's just reducing a portion of what was in the budget, and it's not the actual bond financing. Then I think one of the things that I heard was this concept of deferring vehicles and looking at the funding sources. Do we have things in fund balance reserve that we can remove and not do, and instead replace with projects that we had in other funding sources? So I will say that I personally have looked at all the projects that are bond financed, and I've done it more than once, I've done it more than twice, and I've done it more than 3 times. Similarly, in the general fund balance reserves, when I look at the projects, want to make sure, yes, they're capital projects, but before I would recommend using fund balance reserves, I do not want it to be a project that's going to recur, because we do have capital projects that we do year after year after year. So So I've looked at all of these, but in hearing what we said last week and trying to find a compromise, we can defer 2 vehicles out of general fund balance reserves. The reason that there's no monies over in the column is because that doesn't help, has a net impact of 0 on the budget. But if we were still willing to utilize $1 million in fund balance reserves instead of doing those 2 projects, we could look at carving out the rest of the paving project for HPD. There's money for a public art project, and there was money for Pangbourne Park improvements. $25,000, $15,000, and $12,000. You have the lines identified there. And instead of funding them with a transfer from general fund, basically our operational or pay-go money, we would now utilize general fund balance reserves to fund those. And again, taking away 2 vehicles in order to save these 3 things and still find a way to reduce the budget. All said and done, that would mean our fiscal year 18 proposed budget would be right at $1,000 even.
Can you tell us a little bit about the vehicles? How many miles they have on them?
The Public Works is a 2004 pickup, and I cannot answer
It's 13
how
years.
many miles.
It's 13 years old.
Correct.
Okay. How about the other one?
It would be one in our Community and Economic Development Department, and I'm
Jill's
uncertain
here.
of the mileage.
I don't know, Joe, if you have any details on that. I know
It's a
that,
2003 vehicle.
No, it's 14 years old.
We have deferred vehicles.
And what do
quite
we use
often.
that vehicle for, Jim?
In our department, we use our newer vehicle for business prospecting. This is sometimes used for special events or for, in the community development, to go out and visit properties. We tend not to use it because of its age and condition for some of our public relations aspects of our department. And we do, when our main newer vehicle is being utilized, we will borrow from another department for those types of business attraction activities.
How much money have y'all, somebody had to put into these vehicles to keep them running? Is there any indication, do you have those numbers?
I don't know, I could get that.
thanks, Jill.
But again, in looking at finding ways to remove the $672,000 in revenue and still come back with items that we can absolutely do, we can make it through in fiscal year 18, this is the best that I could do at that point,
Understand.
based on the direction I was given last week. And so if majority says defer vehicles, we're deferring vehicles.
So if what you presented us is where the majority appears to be attempting to get to, and you add in or subtract, however you want to look at it, the other 40,000 that Emily brought up in regard to the traffic related items, are you saying that I can then come to sheet 2 and have that 40,000 sort of available to maneuver into these items that you mentioned at the bottom?
If you would like,
Right.
yes.
And so the 94 is a plus or minus? Or it's neutral?
The 90, that is a minus, because we
So-
started the budget with 10,000.
So I still need 10 or I'm even now? So it's either 40 or it's 50?
No,
Right now,
even
you're
now.
even. So if you want to add the 40 back in
Okay.
savings, now you've got
Okay,
41,000 in
that's
your
what I was
budget
trying to
versus
figure out.
1,000.
You're actually
Okay.
just to the good,
And you're
$1,000.
saying all of this other stuff, you're saying these 3 additional items at the bottom are additional items?
No, they're funded through deferring vehicles.
Well, yeah, but they're being added back in at the expense of these other 2 items,
Correct.
right?
Correct. In exchange for fund balance versus transfer
So
versus
this is just
pay-go.
me, one person speaking. I have the option in my mind, again, just one person, to either add back the health insurance fund money. I'm just prioritizing in my head. or fund one of these two vehicles, right? As an individual looking at this, that's what I'm left with.
Or you could say you want $41,000 left in your budget.
Yeah.
Put the
Yeah, I hear what
CIP
you're
projects back and leave the remaining cuts.
Or you could say that you wanna add the money back in for the.
Legal fees.
Advertising, marketing promotions for whatever.
Oh, we didn't cut that. That. Oh. I see
At the
what you
top, the
mean.
24,000 we
Right.
originally
I see what you're
said.
saying. Yep, I'm sorry.
I think operationally, the dollar amount shown here, we can move around as we want, but these were really the dollars that we felt we could do without that wouldn't impact services and staffing levels.
Can you speak to the smoke alarms briefly? That 28, that is getting taken?
Yes, so Chief Lure is not here, he is out
But is
this
it-
week, but one of the things they're looking at doing is through the American Red Cross, is actually securing, still finding a way to get the smoke alarms, but through a different funding source, which they've been successful at doing.
They
And
do
he
one
felt
for-
pretty good, he was good for fiscal year 18. And he's saying, please don't call him to the table.
Eric, for the truck, can you just touch on that briefly? When we heard from Jill, I'd want to hear about your vehicle.
I can get the mileage and the repair costs and all that first thing in the morning.
I'm more
Works,
concerned
but
about
How you use
what
it.
its purpose, like what you're using it for.
General maintenance on the street, that sort of thing,
Okay.
yeah. We have a number of vehicles, obviously, in our department. We have a good fleet management system. We can defer it a year, that's okay.
So what do you have
A
now?
lot of vehicles in the
General
city, just to
fund.
understand, a lot of vehicles in the city can be a lot of years and just not have a lot of mileage.
Right.
Depending on the vehicle, we have some dump trucks could be 15 years old and had 45,000 miles because they're used primarily for snow removal, that sort of thing.
Right.
These trucks
Go back
generally
into
have
the
more
fleet
mileage. The Cavalier, I suspect, probably has a lot more mileage. Police cars usually have well over 100,000 miles because they travel a lot more than, so it just depends on the vehicle. But basically, this truck's a general use vehicle for street maintenance, that sort of thing.
And the reason the years are so high is the vehicles in the past is the first things that I make the staff cut before I even come back in
Yeah,
March.
vehicles have been deferred before, so. But it's just one of many, so, I'll find out.
A bunch of new trucks over there in that parking lot.
In ours, there's a couple, but I wouldn't say a bunch. And
But
we
I've
appre-
seen this
we
truck on the
appreciate that.
street. I
You
have
think?
seen this truck on the street.
34, yeah, it definitely gets used, no question about it, so. But I'll get the
Or we
information.
could take that
first.
$40,000 that we've realized this evening and put that here for undesignated expenses.
Or you could say, Michelle Hepburn, we want you to give that 40,000 from the general fund over to the economic redevelopment fund, so there's an additional 40,000 that Joe Frick can use for some type of incentive program.
Or you could take some more money out of the general fund reserve and put over in that fund too. like
I'm
was suggested
standing
over
firm
and
with the
over
options
again.
as I presented.
Yeah.
I think we should use it for economic development. Or else we're gonna continue to be in this predicament
Frankly,
each year.
I agree with you. The better economic development we do, the better tax base we're gonna have.
And that's not enough, just so you know.
It's better than zero.
You don't like
That
that
40's
option?
not enough.
Oh.
Well, we
It's
do have,
better than zero.
we do have other things in the Economic Redevelopment Fund, though,
We
that
do.
we'd like to talk to you about, too. So,
Like to
some
hear
other
it.
programs, so.
So this basically gets us to a 2.8 cent tax increase.
That's the goal,
Tax
yes.
rate, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say tax rate increase.
If that is the goal in which to compromise and get this budget passed, yes.
What's it do to next year?
We're gonna be here in June, July, and August with the stormwater management fee and making sure that we're implementing
And
things that we
other
said.
possible
and-
revenue enhancements.
Correct. The ones that are at the top with $0.
We're short. If we do nothing, we're short next year.
Yes.
Significant.
And the year after, and the year after. So we have to This administration will be charged with putting us on a fiscally sound path into the next 20 years.
Mayor, I hope you're right.
I said charged with, I didn't say we were gonna accomplish it, I said charged with it.
Well, I think this administration is being pretty prudent and pretty fiscal as we sit here.
I think so too, but I also know that if we don't set ourselves up in the 19 budget for future years, then we're gonna leave a legacy of debt that we can't afford. So, that's why we have to begin working as soon as we reach a consensus on this budget, on next year's budget, right away. We don't put it off.
So do we wanna put do we wanna defer those two projects for $40,000, signal timing optimization and signal controller upgrades? Do I have 3 to put it back?
I'm fine with that.
And
For
now
an
that we've,
economic redevelopment? Is that where you're putting it, Michelle?
whatever the majority
Do we have
says.
to make that decision tonight? Can we go over the rest of the, don't we have other chapters
We-
to go over?
Yeah, we could, but I really would like to have some final
We have to have a
direction.
tax rate for next week.
Because we
Then I
have
say
our
economic
hearing.
Development, that's my vote.
Well, but it just says it has to be balanced. We could leave the 41,000 here and in July decide, hey,
Yeah,
this
right.
is, we're in a good, we could decide to leave it here until we move forward with stormwater management fee, make sure that we're gonna get that done in the current year.
Leave it there for.
And then make the decision to move it in July.
Fine with that.
There we go.
So you'll have a 41,000 to the good.
41,000 to the good. It just, we can't be at the negative.
Okay, so next,
2.8 cents.
yeah, next week, when we have our public hearing, that's where you'll be. We'll be at the 2.8 cents.
Okay.
The constant yield. We'll have this,
Make sure that you let everybody know at this public hearing, how many times in the last 20 years, city government stated constant yield? Because I'll bet you can count on less than one hand.
What year was that, Lou, that we didn't have to report that we were staying in?
Yeah, that was certainly the year we went to, when they changed.
2011?
I think it was like more than 2009. We were looking at that the other day, Emily and I think it was closer to 09. It was in your administration.
Yeah.
And it had to be like an election year.
First time we've
because the
never
county-
had to put a.
The county changed it for the election year.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Community Legacy Program, Kathleen and Alex.
I'll tax checks going down.
Good afternoon. We have two memos here because it's two different grant programs, but I'm just gonna pile them together for the presentation. They're from the same agency at the state. It's the Community Legacy Program and the Strategic Demolition Fund at both Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Every year since Community Legacy was created, the city has submitted grant applications, and we've been very successful over the years. The goal of the program is to help facilitate projects to do revitalization in your designated sustainable community area, and particularly those that will leverage other funds, so you see a ripple effect to enhance things. Strategic Demolition Fund was created more recently. We have never received funds through that program, but it's to help with, you know, the pre-costs when you're trying to get something going, like demolition, you know, all those kinds of things. And so this is the time of year when we think about what are the goals in our sustainable community plan for the revitalization? What are the things that we think we should move forward with grant requests? Well, going on simultaneously with this, city staff have been meeting with the urban improvement project partners every 2 weeks at 7 o'clock in the morning. As the county is spearheading this project to try to keep it coordinated and keep everything moving. And for those folks in the community who may not be aware what the urban improvement project is, it used to be called the Downtown Improvement Project, but it's a large project involving a lot of partners. One is the expansion of the Maryland Theater by tearing down their ticket office and building a brand-new addition across the ticket office footprint in the courtyard, expansion of the school system, presence downtown by tearing down the vacant building between BISFA and the Maryland Theater to create a new classroom and cafeteria building to serve BISFA, as well as to enable bring more Board of Ed programs to the downtown. And then an expansion of the University System of Maryland Center at Hagerstown to go across the street into 55, 59, something like that, West Washington Street, to do a hospitality management program on the ground floor and create wet labs on the second floor that could be used by the medical programs at the university that are coming online soon, and probably also the nursing program, and then also be used through a sublease agreement by the Board of Education students. And then there's two other aspects that aren't talked about quite as much, but one is to create a plaza behind the buildings on West Washington Street that links all of these projects, as well as a pedestrian bridge that links between, in the back of the West Washington Street buildings, that links between the new Board of Ed building down to the University System of Maryland building, so that they can control movement of the students on the interior, which is a goal of the Board of Education. So that's the entire urban improvement project. And so the county and Senator Serafini and Delegate Wilson have been sort of spearheading these meetings that we have. And they came to city staff and said, we would like you to focus your community legacy strategic demolition fund activities this year on the urban improvement project. And so we got together with county staff to figure out where are the funding gaps, and with those gaps, which match up best with these two programs. And so what's proposed here is that we apply to community legacy to assist Maryland Theater expansion and the Board of Education expansion, requesting $300,000 grant for each as a pass-through to those two entities to help with getting to the bottom line of the funds needed for those two projects. For the Strategic Demolition Fund program, we're proposing to apply for $500,000 to help with the demolition costs for the ticket office building for the Maryland Theater, $500,000 for the demolition costs of the vacant building between BISFA and the Maryland Theater, and then $500,000 to assist with undergrounding the utilities in the plaza area. And then another aspect that we need the Mayor and City Council's guidance on is the $1 million of future bond proceeds that this entity has said would be earmarked for either some portion of the urban improvement project or all of the urban improvement project. If the Mayor and Council would like to earmark that money from the urban improvement project, would you be interested in earmarking it for the plaza, which we anticipate is gonna wind up being a city
We're
project?
gonna own it anyway. I mean, as far as maintenance and things like that.
And the plaza actually is, I think, the least known about what is planned on being done, and conceivably one of the biggest deals of them all. And I was glad to now understand who bought the parking lot. I was a little concerned when I saw that got sold without us being involved, but now that I see who did buy it, it works.
District Court is gonna play a big part in what happens with that plaza back there.
And the parking garage.
Right.
We don't know at this point. Delegate Wilson.
They could always go
is
east,
trying
we
to
could close
plan.
that alleyway off and make that a pedestrian alleyway and not a vehicle alleyway. And that
So
way
at
it
this
wouldn't,
point-
that way it wouldn't affect the future parking deck or the plaza.
So Delegate Wilson is trying to facilitate those conversations with the judges as well as the architect assigned to this. And this is a long-term expansion, not immediate term, but they don't know whether they're gonna go backwards onto their own parking lot or if they would go to the west into the Columbia Bank property. And if they go into the Columbia Bank property, Rodney feels that that pretty much negates the possibility of doing a deck in that location. But at this point, we don't know where the district court wants to go, and so that's an unknown that Delegate Wilson is trying to help with.
Over to the Shockey building.
Speaking from experience, the elected
Across the
officials,
street.
especially one that sits on the Budget and Tax Committee of the Senate, has considerable power over making that decision. I know, I was there. So it should be a pretty easy decision to arrive at pretty fast, I would think.
Yeah, it's a project that's like 5 years or so out, so they are not in that, okay, this is what we're doing stage yet, but we're trying to figure out if they can make that decision, because it helps us with planning. We can still make the plaza work if they go backwards.
Yeah, if they go backwards, it's not a huge deal, and we could always give them parking on the deck, secure parking, if that be the case.
But theirs is more long-term, and our plaza's already there. We think they're gonna build the courthouse into the plaza? I mean, wouldn't it pretty much force their?
Well,
hand to go the
I
other
don't think the
direction?
plaza interferes with their parking currently. I believe
Right.
the plaza's around it.
I'm
Or,
worried about the courthouse.
anyway, the concept is.
But a big part of the plaza is undergrounding utilities.
Figure it out later.
Right.
Is what?
Undergrounding utilities, about $1 million or so. Yeah, Rodney is coordinating that with all the different
I thought we
people.
put a bunch of those utilities underground though when we did the new roadway around there.
Yeah, it's possible, but there's plenty more.
I mean, we did put some underground then, didn't we, Rodney?
Some of the electric,
Okay.
our
I
electric
thought we did,
system.
yeah.
But the big ticket items, Verizon, they're saying $750,000 now. That's just their initial number to try to scare everybody, and it worked. And then there's 6 other utilities in there, so there's a lot to deal with.
Right.
Package deal.
So what are you looking for from us tonight, Ken?
Authorization for us to submit these grants as proposed in the memos, and then a resolution on the May 23rd to support the 2 grant applications.
How are we about that? We in?
Yes,
Yeah.
great idea.
What
Okay.
about the direction on the 1 million?
I think it's still to be determined.
I mean,
As long as we
are they
have it,
looking
as
for
long as
that?
we have it.
Are they looking for that, for the?
When we fill out the application
Right.
form, you need to be able to show where planned funds are coming from.
Right.
To fill out the project. And so if we have no idea where the funds are gonna come from, it won't help our
Well, I have
strategic
no
demolition
problem
fund.
with saying that then, yeah. If we don't get it, we can use the funds for something
We're
else.
talking about putting the million towards the plaza, is that what you're talking about?
Right.
I don't have an issue with that.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Oh, we're not
Thank you.
going anywhere. We're not going
I'll
anywhere.
have a tongue-in-cheek suggestion.
Okay.
I've heard complaints about the name UIT, UIP.
It's called the DIP, please. Downtown Improvement Program.
So I have this tongue-in-cheek suggestion. Back when William Donald Schaffner was governor of Maryland, his slogan was, "Just do it." So if we put a D in front of that UIP, we would be pretty close to Governor Schaefer's "Just do it." We could go and do it. It's a little better than UIP.
The Downtown Urban Improvement Project.
Right, I know. Do the urban improvement project, that's
I
right.
like it.
Roddy and I will pass that along.
It was.
All right, you're
tongue-in-cheek.
next.
Okay.
Strategic Demolition Fund application.
Oh, that, we-
Oh, we did,
Yeah, it was a-
okay, well,
it was a-
cool, then rezoning Old Town Development LLC. All right.
my apologies in advance. I'm fighting allergies, so that's, I haven't said much so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't apologize. We don't want you to, you know.
Don't get carried away there.
Just to follow up after the public hearing on in the end of April, we've not received any further input on the proposed rezoning. And tonight we hope to get a direction from this body as to where you would like to go with the rezoning specifically. Whether you agree with the applicant's justification and the planning commission's reasoning concerning mistake in the existing residential zoning classification that's currently on the property at 613. And then also, do you agree that commercial local CL zoning is appropriate for that site?
I do, Mayor, and I'm not one who usually agrees with a mistake.
I do.
But I think it was a mistake this time.
I do too, Mayor, I think that's right.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, you did good.
Still not leaving.
Still
we're
not leaving.
We're still not going anywhere.
Just do it.
And finally, what we have on here is a proposed amendment to the water and wastewater policy to add a new exception to deal with situations where someone is trying to create a new lot of record or existing lot of record for a single-family home or a two-family home outside the medium range growth area, and their well testing attempts failed to gain health department approval due to GWIDI issues. And might be wondering, what is a GUIDI issue? I wondered the same thing when this was brought to me by the property owner who was frustrated because he couldn't get a well, he couldn't
even
get
it
city
tested.
water.
He wouldn't even test it.
He spent some money testing it, doing wells and getting it tested, but he couldn't get it approved. And so we got together with the utility staff and we went over and met with the health department just to figure out what this GUIDI situation is, how extensive it is, if we were to try to accommodate it in some way, what would be the impact on our system, how often does it come up for the health department. And so we met with them, and GUIDI is groundwater under the direct influence of surface water, assuming that some contaminants may have gotten into the surface water and it trickles down through the karst geology and then it gets into the groundwater. So that's GUIDI. I didn't even know how to spell it when it was being explained to me. But anyway, what we learned is that because of the karst geology in the Hagerstown Valley, any given well drilling could wind up with GUIDI issues. But in particular, they have designated 2 very large areas in our county where issues are known to occur, and they're calling them sensitive areas. One is down near Boonesboro and Keedysville, and then one is actually right beside us, on the northwest side of us, north of 40, east of the Greencastle Pike, and basically from our boundaries over to Greencastle Pike, PA line down to 40. In that area, they've been known to be GUIDI issues. And so we got a copy of that map recently, which is why we're now ready for you to review this proposal. During this discussion, we then asked, so where's the result where it fails? It's 2 + 2, 4, you're out. No, we found that there is no hard and fast rule for what makes it fail. It could be a variety of factors, and it becomes a judgment call for health department staff. So then there was no easy answer for us there. Then we asked about, well, what are the on-site treatment options if someone has this problem? Can't you do some on-site thing like the UV lights and all that kind of stuff? And we were advised by the health department staff that the only acceptable on-site treatment for this type of situation is if you have a certified water treatment officer to oversee the well, which is beyond most single-family homeowners. We then asked how often this type of situation has arisen, and we were informed that about once per year over the past 3 to 5 years. So it's not something that comes up a lot. But certainly if it does come up, whoever the property owner is, in the example that we had someone come forward who has a farm, he wants to subdivide a lot off for a family member outside the urban growth area, GUIDI problems, can't get the lot approved. And so you have folks who just have no recourse. They can't go anywhere. There's nothing they could do that would make a well work. And so we got together, we figured, well, what could we do with our water and wastewater policy that could create an exception to deal with this on a limited basis, so we know that we're still protecting the capacity with our utility, as well as it's still being in line with the policies of our utility. And so what we're suggesting is that we create exception number 9, which would allow the utilities director to approve up to 3 requests per calendar year on a first-come, first-served basis for new single-family or new 2-family residents under the following specific circumstances. First being the health department has provided a request with documentation to planning and the utilities departments that the new well for the proposed new lot or existing lot of record does not meet the minimum criteria for drinking water requirements, and the well cannot be approved by the health department. The second is the health department's analytical results are consistent with COMAR, which is the state of Maryland code, and this analysis identifies contaminants which are precluded from treatment in new wells per state law. The third, the proposed lot or existing lot is contiguous to a right-of-way containing a city water line. And fourth, any extension of the existing water infrastructure is the responsibility of the landowner requesting service, and all required improvements to the water infrastructure shall be in conformance with the city water and wastewater standards and specs. And now, because some of these GUIDI situations may even actually be outside the county designated urban growth area, we're also suggesting that any proposed granting of this exception, if it's outside the UGA and outside priority funding areas, it will need to first receive the approval of the administrative authority of the county water and sewer plan. And so that, we feel that while we have not gone as far as the health department would like, they would like a lot more flexibility in this regard. We feel that what we've got deals with this difficult situation while at the same time respecting the capacity issues that we have, doesn't open up the floodgates for who knows how many requests once people know, well, if the water line's out there, I can just hook on.
Mayor, I'm good with this.
Be able to annex the property?
It would require a pre-annexation agreement, so in theory, if we were to ever get out there, we could.
If it's outside the MRGA, it's pretty far away
Yeah.
usually. And we've ran it past county folks as well, and they recognize this also as a very difficult situation.
I'm a no. No way.
Why is that?
There's no benefit to the city to do so. We're basically exhausting our utility for areas that are clearly well beyond the defined area in which we have designed our system to serve. So we're basically, in every instance we do this, we're filling up we're filling up the space from the outside in. And I don't see the logic in it. And every time you connect on, one of these properties, out an area as far away as that, you impact the functional capacity of that system. And let's say you do this for, I don't know, 50 properties. Let's say there's 50 properties and you do that over a 10, 15-year period. There's no return on investment there. None at all. Your return on investment and your capacity to manage that portion of your system is negative. So.
Kathy?
Others can.
We would be responsible for running the water line, or they have to be?
They would have to.
do it.
Right.
The
So it
service.
doesn't cost our,
The service, yes.
Right.
The service
To
line.
make the connection, they would have to do that.
Right, the service,
Right.
yeah. Not the main, the service.
there's our main
Right.
out
The
there.
main's
But the
there.
main's
It
already
has-
there.
It has to be
Right.
Has to
there.
be there.
Okay. So that doesn't cost us anything, that costs the property owner, and then they pay the county rate for water.
All right,
So there is a return on investment.
yeah, you're right, there is. That's the same logic that you would use to make the argument that the county sewer system it built had a return on investment of positive nature, which never materialized. Not correct whatsoever.
I actually never made that argument before.
But it's the same type of extension for a minimal amount of user capacity.
I would suggest that everyone is right here, and there is a solution. For those of us who were around when we were in Boomtown, and we had two major shopping centers, both wanting to build after Garland Grow, and we had all this pressure on us, I understand what Kristen is saying, because there was actually a time in the city, not that long ago, when we didn't think we had enough capacity for water, sewer, or anything. Right now, we do. Right now, there are very limited requests. This is the first request of this nature I remember ever coming down the pipe. And all I can say is for every policy that you make, you can change.
Exactly.
And as we sit here.
Per the circumstance.
In today's world, with what we have now and the amount that we can foresee coming on under this policy, that can always be changed. While it may not be a return investment for our citizens, we have decided long, long ago, in a very positive vein, to be the water supplier for a lot more than just our citizens. And so I suggest we do this, we adopt this policy, and if times change and pressure causes a different change, or we find suddenly we had one this year and next year we have 15, then we have to review it.
The nice thing about this was that we were limiting it to 3 requests per year, and there can only be for single-family residential, so it's not, it would be a huge impact. Well, and that was a concession of the health department, because they obviously wanted us to be,
Right.
open the floodgates, as Kathy said.
So we're good, thank you.
Okay,
Thank-
so
thank
put it on for the 23rd.
Sounds
amended
great.
policy.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kathy.
Great, thank you.
Incidentally, Kathy. thank
Karen
you
and
for
Susan.
attending those 7 a.m. meetings.
Happy to do it.
I'm sure.
Amendment to the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan.
Good evening.
Hello.
We recently met with you in regard to the police and fire retirement plan to look at some administrative changes to the plan. We wanted to clean up the documents some, so we have those approved. Oh, I'm sorry. We recently met with you to talk about the police and fire retirement plan. We came forward with amendment number 10, which cleaned up some of the administrative duties in that plan, so we wanted to get those stated correctly for the administration. We're now coming to you with looking at some savings potentials. We will be working with the committee, the Police and Fire Committee, over the next couple of months to look for some additional savings, but we have 2 items that we'd like to get approved before the end of the plan year, because our plan year ends also on June 30th. So we want to implement these for July 1 of this year. The first one that we're requesting an amendment to the plan is about crediting interest to employees' accounts. Employees are contributing the 7% into the plan, but right now the plan annually gives 5% interest to those accounts. That interest is only beneficial to people who would terminate from the plan, take their money, and they get a 5% interest on that. Being a government plan, we're not required to do that, so we decided this may be a small savings, but over the long run, it can be a bigger savings. In 2016, $5,700 in interest was paid out to folks who requested a refund of their contributions. So we'd like to lower that. We'd like to go back to a 0% interest. Anybody who plans to retire, that interest doesn't do anything for them. It's just there if they decide to cash out. So that's the first thing that we're recommending, that we amend the plan. The second step that we're looking at is just expanding the timing for an eligible employee to request buyback of service time, whether they're a rehire, someone who came back to the city, or if there's someone who worked for another police department, for instance, and they can take that service time and add it to our plan. But what they do is they have to purchase the time plus any actuarial value with that. So it just gives them a benefit to come to the city that they can transfer service from another plan. So at this time, those are the 2 things we're asking for. Right now, a rehire only has 90 days to do that. So that's why we want to expand it, that they can do it any time during their employment. So it helps out. So those are the 2 things that we're asking for approval of at this time. Probably later on in the year, we'll be reviewing this with the committee to see what do we do to the plan to make it sustainable. Are there any other cost savings? And we'll be working with our actuary and the committee to develop what those ideas might be.
So the goal is the next annual review in January is to present council with those recommendations.
Yes.
Are you just telling us, or do you need our permission to do this?
This is an amendment. This is an amendment number 11. We just did amendment number 10, so this will come up for a vote for approval.
This evening.
Right.
An introduction.
Yeah, for the introduction, correct.
And
We're
Susan,
good.
you did
We're
say,
good.
Susan, you did say these changes would take effect July 1.
Yes.
Paul, you have a question?
How do the union folks feel about it?
We're good to go. We presented that, we let everybody know about it as to it's not affecting anyone with long-term service. It's only anyone who has less than 5 years service who would terminate and take their money, or somebody who's vested for a future benefit could take their money, and anything they've accrued to date stays there. It will continue to be shown on their statement as credited service. Well, credited interest. They just won't receive any more after the June 30th timeframe.
And
It will stay.
some of the feedback, just some side conversations we've had, 5% is a lot more than what you can earn in a savings account right now. And the folks who are in the plan want to preserve their future benefit. So they see that as a drain on their future benefit. So they were perfectly fine with taking it down to 0.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, look at that.
So moved.
We're gonna go into the 15th special session, so moved by Lou.
Second.
Second by Don. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Introduction of an ordinance, amendment to the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to introduce an ordinance to amend the City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Employees Retirement Plan to eliminate interest to be credited on employee contributions other than refundable contributions transferred from the Maryland State Retirement System after June 30, 2017. 2, to permit a retired employee to repay a cash-out distribution with interest at any time prior to reaching a termination date. 3, permit the election to transfer prior service with other government employers to be made at any time prior to reaching a termination date. And 4, make administrative clarifications consistent with Maryland law.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Approval of resolution, the financial incentive agreement with Aries Investment Group LLC.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the mayor and council approval of a resolution authorizing the city to enter into a financial incentive agreement with Aries Investment Group LLC in connection with its redevelopment of the property at 8698 to 98 West Washington Street, referred to as the Hamilton Building, and the creation of 24 new apartments. This incentive will be paid for from general fund economic development incentives line items.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple of discussion points. So, I noticed that this agreement has changed to some degree with prior iterations. And I think the item that I have raised the most concern with is, you know, here is a developer that we're obviously providing financial incentive to basically take corrective action to fix up what's otherwise a vacant and dilapidated building downtown. I mean, that's generally what's occurring. And it is obviously public information that this owner owns other buildings within the vicinity that are dilapidated, vacant, and not only in need of repair, but also are notified by the city of Hagerstown as being unsafe structures. Now, I know obviously this agreement appears to be absent the requirement that this property owner that we're about to give financial incentives to address those other outstanding vacant and dilapidated building concerns. So I had asked staff to provide me some information just to give me an idea of sort of, you know, what conditions we're talking about in these other buildings, and really you can't miss them, you know, when you drive past them. You know, and what the response level has been, because I'd like to think that, you know, it's one thing if you're going to address a property owner on these types of issues simply as that property owner. In my opinion, it's another altogether to provide actual financial incentive to a property owner which isn't properly maintaining their property in accordance with your codes in your city. And, you know, one of the pictures that I had, and I apologize, I had asked for this information some time ago. I just received it. But there is a letter in relation to, it looks like 66 Washington Street. And I wanted to be able to at least ask staff, and, you know, there's a picture of it. You guys are more than welcome to see it.
Is that the rear?
You know, in which we have let the property owner know of the property's condition. You know, it's unsafe to the public.
What's your address?
66 Washington. I mean, we actually notified them of that, you know, before I go sort of, you know, handing
That's
over.
West Washington, right?
That's
Yeah.
Delta Hosiery Building, yes.
Yeah.
And that picture's at the rear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not the Shockey Building, which is a whole nother item altogether. So I guess my curiosity is, you know, it's all well and good, and everybody wants to see the Hamilton, and certainly me as well, you know, redeveloped. But I also need to understand, as we would proceed to do this, what's being done about these other buildings. I certainly don't want to find that, that there's some premise that we're not going to continue to address these in a manner, and actually have that property owner work with us in an active manner to address those concerns that we've iterated. I mean, this notice went out in, the middle of 2015. I'm curious what's happened with even just this single Delta Hosiery building since the middle of 2015 to ensure that proper recourse is being taken, that corrective action is being taken before I go handing over an incentive package of, the significant amount that this agreement talks to.
The building is in really rough shape, and so the property owner would be more than happy to tear it down. It's in the historic district. And so in order to take down a building that's considered a significant resource, not just contributing, but a significant resource in the historic district, you have to show the commission, all right, if you're taking it down, what are you putting in its place? And so they've had those preliminary conversations with the HDC. Then the next step was, show us what's gonna go back in its place. And so that's where they are with an architect. They need to come back with those plans.
Is either of those buildings, the Delta or the Shockey, are both of them in a safe state right now?
Our feeling was where it's collapsing is in the back. We had them put up a fence so that no one can get to it. It does not appear to be collapsing into anybody else's property or against anybody else's building. It appears to be collapsing into its own property.
In the one notice, it says in here that you wanted to be able to get inside of the building, I guess, to determine whether or not it's having a demolition effect or a safety effect on adjoining buildings. Has that occurred? Have you been able to actually get in the building?
I don't think anybody
and make that
wants to get
determination?
into that part of the Delta building, because it is, if you've seen it back there, it's not safe to get into that section that's
But
collapsing.
in your professional opinion, as of right now, it is not collapsing into another building's property.
No, it's sliding into the parking lot area.
Thank you.
That's behind the
So
building.
have we been granted access to make that review as staff has requested?
Our structural consultant does not want to go into the building. We had a similar issue with the one that was torn down on Antietam Street. That one was to such a state, it wasn't safe to go in there and to really determine exactly what the problems. You
So-
could see that it was coming down, but nobody wanted to go in,
So you're saying that it's of a similar state as the one on Antietam?
except the one on Antietam was threatening to fall into the Antietam paper building, into the neighboring property.
Was that an historic,
It was a contributing building, it's a lesser
okay.
lesser
So it could be
quality.
torn down without much hassle.
On Antietam Street,
Right.
yeah.
This will not be torn down without hassle.
The HDC has resigned themselves to the fact we're gonna lose this building. They just need to come back with the plans for what goes in its place.
Okay.
And we worked with the Azatis and told them that, let's get the Hamilton along to a certain extent, and then come back with your architectural plans so that once you are finished with the rehab, you're ready to go with the Delta. Of course, the Hamilton project has gotten a bit delayed since those
And that sounds like a
conversations.
plan. I mean, to any reasonable person anyway.
Well, that's all well and good, but when folks of this body sit here and from time to time indicate that much more menial infractionary issues being cited upon property owners are of an overbearing nature, and then I get this information and look at this, which in anybody's right mind clearly indicates that it's of an unsafe nature, that we've indicated as such, and clearly is of a magnitude much greater than a great percentage of other less impacting things we enforce. It's a little hard to swallow that argument.
Anything else, Kathy and Joe?
There is language in the agreement that we did add with this respect, and it's page 8, and it's page 7 and 8. letter I. I'll point out the paragraph that says the city shall not be responsible or liable for any unsafe conditions related to the Delta. Gives the city the ability to reassess any delayed compliance strategies outlined related to the Delta, and that Aries will be fully responsible and liable.
I read that part, I got it. I just find it odd that we have went, in my opinion, about 180 degrees from the beginning iteration of this to now it's almost like we're writing into this document some type of self-protection from the very thing that we acknowledge exists, but are able to see past.
Would you like us to take that part out?
No, if it were up to me, I would have kept in language that required all those properties to be brought up to code immediately before I go giving this property owner some type of personal financial incentive package.
Anything
And
else
that's
for
what we're
Kathy or
doing.
Jill?
Yeah, that was the direction we were given to change the language.
Any other questions or comments,
I have
discussion on this?
I have a comment, Mayor.
Go ahead, Don.
Kristen, you're absolutely and totally right. However, I'm going to take the option to vote in favor of this simply because I think the completion of the Hamilton building is so essential to the rebuilding of all the downtown that it's a crapshoot. Yes, it's a crapshoot, but it's a crapshoot worth taking because we just need that building, the Hamilton, redeveloped so badly to allow the downtown to fully come back.
Anybody else?
I agree, but no resolution like this that you pass, in just my opinion, is going to provide you some protection from the things that we have obviously iterated to owners on those other structures that we've clearly identified and by this document are somehow saying we're exempting ourselves from. If anybody believes that's what this can actually do, they're greater legal minds than myself.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. City Administrator's comments, please.
Nothing additional this evening, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Mr. Munson?
Oh, yes, Mayor, I do have some comments to make. Last Friday, I had the pleasure of attending an event in Williamsport. That is the groundbreaking ceremony at the canal. That was an extraordinary event. When I was a senator, I worked and worked and worked to attempt to try to get the canal developed. And here it is, many years later, it's finally taking place. And it's through, quite frankly, the good work, the good offices of the former mayor of Williamsport, Jim McLeaf. The first day Jim was in office, he and I sat down to talk about the future of the canal. And he became a quick devotee, and he never once gave up on trying to get that canal rebuilt, or at least the Williamsport aspect of it. And also Kevin Brandt, who is the superintendent of the C&O Canal Park. This man is incredible. He managed to get $7 million out of Congress to, and ultimately a lot more to do this project, when money is always hard to get for a park. But the significance of this to Hagerstown, and it is significant, is that when I was a senator, they were getting 140,000 visitors a year at Williamsport to see what features there are at the canal. Here it is, 7 years later, and they are up to about 450,000 visitors per year, somewhere in that neighborhood. And when the Aqueduct is finished, rebuilt, and there's boats going up and down that aqueduct. Undoubtedly, there will be 1 million visitors a year, maybe more. And some of them, a lot of them, are going to gravitate to Hagerstown to see our cultural trail, to check out our German restaurant and 28 South and all the other good restaurants in downtown. And I see this project that I visited last week as being essential to the future development of Washington County, and that project very helpful to the city of Hagerstown ultimately. Thank you.
Agreed. Lou?
I'd just like to congratulate you, Mayor, staff, and my fellow council members for getting this budget down to where you all want it to be. And I say you all because I was, as usual, willing to raise the tax rate. But I congratulate everybody who certainly have my vote on the budget.
Paul?
No comments.
Kristen?
Just one, just to finish out the discussion we had previous to this. You know, for me, I tell people all the time, Hamilton's my favorite building downtown. Like everybody else, you know, I want to see it redeveloped, I want to see it reused. But here's the difficulty I have, you know, in this position that, you know, we get to vet and view all of these proposals that come before us, you know, and I think back to the various ones from folks like Fitzgerald and Bowen and, you know, and a number of others, you know, Hager 5, and, you know, we try and do the best we can to provide the incentive to the degree that we can for each one of these. You know, in any of those iterations, we have not viewed one in a position where these types of circumstances associated with the other buildings exist, nor, frankly, with the chagrin that I've seen from this particular property owner toward the efforts of city staff to assist in moving things along. You know, you talk to a guy like Mike Fitzgerald, and you know, he's a perpetual proponent of downtown. He's not a naysayer of our staff and obstructing in those efforts. You know, and for me, I think that this just me personally, you know, speaks to some degree of favoritism that I just cannot subscribe to in this instance.
Emily?
No comments.
All right. The only thing I have tonight is I want to wish my lovely wife a happy 36th anniversary. Can't believe that she has put up with me for 36 years, but she has. So, and with that, I'd like to say that we're adjourned, and thank you for a quick meeting.